Hi everyone, this is Roy Bjellquist, and we are back to discuss remembering science fiction television shows of the 1960s and 1970s, and this is for episode number 8, UFO. Everyone that was with us just a couple of minutes ago, I apologize. We actually had technical difficulties, which, you know what, it is part of doing a live presentation. So having a live broadcast, sometimes different things can happen. So there's a feel and there's something to it. So I do apologize that happened, and I appreciate everybody that actually hung in there and waited. And I'm seeing that a lot of people are checking back in. Thank you for that. You know, it is what it is, but we're here to have a good time, and I appreciate your patience, and the issue has since been resolved. With me, just to refresh everybody's memories, I have longtime friend and fan, and this is Mr. Warren Friedrich, and he is actually from Canada, from a city called Regina. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Warren?
That's correct. You're pronouncing that correctly.
All right. Just wanted to make sure.
A lot of flack over that one. No, so I mean, when I first lost you there in the stream, Roy, for 10 seconds, you came back and you said, save the date. So I guess after this time, we're going to have to send them back for warranty.
Exactly. Hey, I've got some comments coming. I just want to say hello to Mike Rizzo out there. Hey, Mike. And good to see you out there. And also we have Dennis. Dennis is also a fellow Canadian. Welcome, Dennis. And as I said, Isabel is out there too. And then my son, I'm seeing my son Ryan is out there. Hey, Ryan, thanks for tuning in with us and our viewership. And again, thank you everybody for being patient as we work through some of these technical difficulties. What I was starting to say before we were disconnected, my first recollection of UFO, interesting enough, was my parents. I was starting to say my parents and I, we lived in Bergen County in a town called Wallington, New Jersey, which is on the outskirts of New York City. And I remember being at my friend's house, and he had the television set going, and in the background was UFO. And I thought it was really cool because they were showing, I don't remember what episode it was, but it was the Moonbase and everything. And it was being broadcast on Channel 9 WOR TV out of New York City at the time. So, and seeing the Moonbase and everything, I thought was really cool. But then I remember seeing a few episodes after that, and they took place on Earth. And my attention span as a, 8-year-old, 9-year-old wasn't so much into it because I like the sci-fi stuff. I like, the Moonbase, the gadgets and everything. And again, at that time, I was only about 9 years old. So when I would see the show after that, if they were on the moon, I would think this is really cool. But I really didn't get the whole premise of the show, really wasn't, versed in it at that point. And I thought it was interesting that some episodes took place in space and then some of them, on the Earth. And then it was interesting to, learn later on that was kind of what, they were going for with 1999, that they essentially wanted to stay away from the Earth for that very reason, because they thought it would be more exciting to be dealing with episodes in space.
Exactly. Like we mentioned earlier, Roy, about the desire from the heads up of ITV to when they developed space, when Jerry developed space, it was, blast the moon out into space so nothing can happen on Earth. And I felt the same way that you just described about watching those episodes on Earth as a youngin'. And that's that they didn't hold my attention.
Right.
And this is also, from what I understand, see, this was the feedback that came from ITC New York,
right,
is that the Earthbound episodes didn't fare as well. And that was the reasoning behind it. But interestingly enough, 40 years later, we're going to talk about a couple episodes here later in the show, and it's those Earthbound episodes that are now my favorites.
Yeah.
Because of the human drama that was going on in them. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, no, and isn't it that is amazing how that kind of switches and changes, and it's almost like a form of maturity, you could say, or just being at a different point in your life, having a different appreciation of different ideas and values and what have you. As I was saying, the first episode, dealt with and basically started the structure of the series of what was going on and what it was dealing with. Another episode, the second episode, which I believe was called Exposed, introduced the character of Paul Foster, Michael Billington, and Michael Billington was a classically trained actor. He was a young guy. I mean, he was about 27 years old at the time, and very fit. He was kind of, very good-looking guy. and
Kentucky.
he was in a position where he was being cast, where they wanted to bring this guy in kind of like as for the women to enjoy, and for the viewers to enjoy, and just kind of like almost like a sex symbol type of individual. In fact, he went later on to attempt to be screen tested for James Bond. I mean, he was under consideration at one point for James Bond, and he wound up ultimately appearing in The Spy Who Loved Me in the 1977 Roger Moore movie at the very beginning, in the opening part of that movie, when he's playing a double agent and he's trying to kill Bond. But he was brought on, and it was a good episode, and it really established his character, because he was a test pilot who was flying and over the earth, and what happens is he picks up with his co-pilot friend that there is a UFO that's in visual sighting, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to get him out of the area because SHADO wants to take down the UFO, and Ed Straker's trying to contact the boss, and he's saying, get that test pilot out of there, or else you're going to have a problem. And ultimately, what happens is they have to detonate and they have to destroy the UFO. And the test pilot, Paul Foster and his other pilot are on their own. They destroy it. Foster is able to eject from the cockpit. His co-pilot is not. And then what happens is he winds up, waking up in a hospital, having temporary blindness, doesn't know where he's at. It's been now for several days. He had taken photos of this UFO, but then when he tries to get the photos, he finds that there's no image. The photos have been tampered with, of course, the big cover-up, which is kind of, the story, it kind of lends credence to what was going on, if you believe in government conspiracies or what have you, or you think they're government conspiracies.
It was X-Files 20 years before X-Files.
Exactly. It really was.
Really good, really well done.
And it showed his determination, that he was trying to get to the truth. He, comes across different personalities, different individuals in his search for the truth. And then he finds out that an article that's almost planted about a colonel Air Force, colonel in the Air Force, who now is a movie executive, and it turns out to be Ed Straker. And he's kind of putting the pieces together, and he starts questioning Straker about this, but Straker is making him think that he's crazy. And what happens ultimately is he's brought on because of his integrity and his determination to get to the truth. Somebody that would be, an asset to SHADO headquarters. It was an excellent episode, and it really laid the groundwork. And I love that ending when they bring out all the people that they staged, to set this up, and it's just everybody that he meets. Dr. Jackson, who incidentally, Dr. Jackson, for our Bond fans out there, he was actually in the movie From Russia with Love, and I always have a problem pronouncing his name, Friedrich. Friedrich Schreibel? Yeah. And he was a Polish actor, and he was in one of my favorite James Bond movies, From Russia with Love, and he played Kronstein, and he had everything calculated, and he was just very precise, and he was just like this evil guy, and he kind of this actor that you would see in these type of movies that, he was just like very sinister, and he just like very calculating, and he plays like a psychiatrist in UFO, and he's just that type of a character in that type of position, and he's controlling all the cards. So it's really interesting at the end when they bring all the people that Foster has met up with, and even supposedly the sister of the pilot that he was friends with, and as they're trying to get the truth of everything. And here she's an operative. She was like leading the team for this whole thing, which was Project Foster. And at the very end, Straker says, is this something you want to do? You're going to go through a training program that's basically going to essentially kill you, and there's not going to be anything left of you. And after that, maybe you'll be half ready. And he's like, he goes, I want to give it a shot. And he goes, I thought you would. And then he says, read this. And then he reads it, and he goes, Paul Foster, 804. And then he says, he's all yours, Alec. And then basically they just take him, he says, takes him out of there. And then Straker's on the phone, and he's doing all these reports and everything, and he's just going crazy. And then Foster and Alec, Freeman, exchange pleasantries with a smile. And then, boom, it's the end of the episode. And it has laid the groundwork that that this guy is going to be an integral part of the series going further. It was just a really cool moment.
All right, and then the next episode, he's like number 3.
Exactly. But I really think Michael Billington. No, it didn't, and I think Michael Billington definitely brought a very strong presence to the series, and it was just, it was very well done.
Absolutely, he brought a lot of gravitas. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I have to ask you, Warren, what you were saying that, from an adult standpoint, you were appreciating, the episodes in a different level than when you were younger. What would you say were a favorite of, your episodes?
Well, that's going to be the double whammy of Question of Priorities and Confetti Check A-OK, right? Which both really, really fleshed out Straker's backstory, his home life, his family life, and Question of Priorities I just watched last night, and it still resonates, and it's so powerful. And that ending, no spoilers, but I mean, like for 1969, 1970, to have themes that they portrayed in that episode, and to have it end the way it did, it just, wow, it was so incredibly powerful and groundbreaking for the time.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, and just and I'll go over this with the fans. If you feel that you don't want to listen to this, as far as I don't want to give away a plot from like a 50-year-old TV series, but
the synopsis is fine. I just didn't want to give away the actual ending.
Yeah, but I mean, with a Question of Priorities, essentially what's happened is you find out that Ed Straker was married. And he has a son that's probably about, maybe, I would say, in the age range of 9 or 10 years old. And, Ed has the opportunity to visit with him and, see him, as he can. And unfortunately, what happens is, as they're parting, his son is saying that he wants to show something to his dad, to Ed Straker. And he's going to go run up and get it. And Ed is talking to his ex-wife, Mary, and he apologizes for coming back late because, they got detained. And then what happens is, as a result, she says, I think, if it's good if you go. So, he leaves, and then his son comes running out to try to go after him. And as he's doing it, he gets hit by a car. And he's in critical condition. And it's just that, flight of trying to deal with that situation. And there's essentially a drug that's going to help him with his condition, and it's a matter of Ed Straker getting that drug to save his son's life, and going about that, and that's for the title, A Question of Priorities, and it's a very powerful episode. It shows you the seriousness of what is going on. It's about decisions, and it's the show is, without giving anything away. I mean, this episode, it could even be deemed as very disturbing. But what Warren just said, to Warren's point, for a show like this to be, televised in 1970, it definitely was, something that it was a risk, I would say, and it was almost a form of reality that was being shown, because a lot of shows are happy and what have you, and it just definitely went into waters that shows I don't think generally would. So I definitely commend the producers on taking that risk with that.
There's a scene in the middle of Question of Priorities in the hospital between Ed Straker and his former wife, and Ed takes a phone call and suddenly says, "I have to leave," and Mary Rutland says to him, just with a icy cold glare,
"Yeah,
you always did right," and just felt the weight of that, and Straker, and it's like, but why he was never there,
right?
He was the head of this top secret organization, and couldn't let her, and his family fell apart.
Yeah, it's really. It was really, yeah. It's tough to watch, and it's very dramatic. It's dramatic TV. Joe is online with us, and he's saying every time he sees this episode, he cries. Yeah, it's definitely hard to digest. But moving on, another episode that you were talking about too, Warren, was Confetti Check A-OK, and that episode is kind of interesting because when we're talking about the family life, it talks about how everything evolved with Ed and with Shadow, and it's because the way it starts out is one of his operatives is actually his wife, I believe, is expecting a baby, and or had just suddenly got married. And what happens is it goes through flashbacks, and you see what happened, in 1970 as he was, being involved in this project. And even General Henderson, we see the beginnings of him with General Henderson. And one thing I always found interesting too, with General Henderson, who is his boss, and you see him throughout, periodically throughout the series. Henderson in the beginning, him and Ed Straker seem to get along pretty good. I mean, they seem pretty tight. In fact, he even says that about Henderson should be the leader of Shadow, and Henderson says that that the board wants him to do it, and because feeling that maybe he's a younger type of person, and he's his in his position, and he would be able to carry the base. What I find interesting is as the series progresses, there's a lot of tension between the two of them, and it's almost like that relationship had deteriorated because of the realities of what they're dealing with budgetary concerns, and trying to deal with the government, and in regards to how their Shadow is funded. So it was kind of interesting because in the beginning part, their relationship seems to be on one level, and then again, as it progresses, it goes to another. So I think there's a lot of reality that's involved in that. It makes it very realistic to how their characters were fleshed out. Would you agree on that?
There was definitely later on there was animosity between them for sure. But I think maybe you touched on something, and maybe at first Henderson was supportive of Straker getting the position because he didn't think he would. And then when Straker did get it, it's just that reality sunk in, and there was jealousy and things like that.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, and I was very surprised by that. But then I kind of like reviewing it. But anyway, getting back to the episode, so Confetti Check A-OK. It's interesting to see how everything evolves though with Shadow. You're seeing Shadow being constructed, and you're seeing where it's going with that. And also him and his wife Mary have a really tight relationship. And then what starts to happen is he starts to work the late nights, and he's not coming home. He's not coming home for dinner, and doing things. And it's disturbing because they really truly are in love, and his work is taking over. And the worst part of it is he wants to tell her about it because he wants to share it with her, but he can't because of the secrecy that's involved with this whole project. And that in itself is the divider that's being formed, and it's tragic. It's almost like like a Greek tragedy because of what's happening. It's very dark in that sense, and the direction it's going to go in because this is all through flashbacks. So there's nothing good is going to come of this, and it just progressively gets worse and worse and worse, and it just leads to where it goes. And I'll leave it at that. But it's an excellent character driven story. And it's those stories are really very well done. And interesting enough, from the rating standpoint, I don't think it was appreciated on the level that it probably should have been. And to your point, what you were saying earlier, Warren, more of the action adventure or the space type stories were more appreciated by the fans at that time, and myself included. But I was definitely a lot younger. But now I tend to have more of a deeper, appreciation for shows that are more thought-provoking, and have for, several years. But again, this was like, 1975 when I was watching it. So,
yeah, for sure. But one other quick thing on Confetti Check, we talked earlier about the film set within the film set motif. And when they're building Shadow here, when you see those flashbacks, I'm not sure, but I'm 90% sure that was the actual new set going up at Pinewood when they moved from MGM to Pinewood. And so they were actually building the set because the former studio had closed down. I'm not sure, but that's my theory anyway, so that when they're wandering around, you see guys up in ladders, that's them actually building the set. I could be wrong.
Yeah. No, you're that would be very would be really cool. Oh, I just want to interject. We have our online comments. I want to say hi to Eva. Thanks for joining us, Eva. I really appreciate it. Eva is a my grade school schoolmate. Hi, Eva. Also, Mike Rizzo. Unfortunately, these type of episodes can be series killers, and yeah, you're absolutely right about that, Mike. That's very true. Joe is commenting, who you love competing with the world, an internal attachment is an external obligation, deep stuff. Yeah, it's very deep, and you have to have the audience for it. I mean, Friday we were talking about The Prisoner, and you talk about a very, very deep show with, imagery and, subtext and just, metaphorical. I mean, shows like that are appreciated, but they have to be appreciated by a certain type of audience, that's an audience that maybe is in the mood for that and wants to see something like that. So it can really depend upon who's watching at the time. So I totally agree about that. And Isabel, a reply saying loved Captain Scarlet. Yeah, Captain Scarlet and the Mr. Ons. good stuff. But yeah, those were the type of shows though. And another excellent episode too, when talking about in regards to Straker and his life and his distractions. I mean, there was the one called The Responsibility Seat, and that was with Jane Merrow, and she was playing a reporter, Joe Frazier, and it was almost like he let his guard down, and she kind of took some information when she was in his office, and I guess one of the operatives had called up and said, Commander Straker, and he was very upset about it because she had a tape recorder, and he thought there was some underdealings going on, and then he cut her off and tried to get the tape recorder back, and then it seemed like things were going to go in a different direction with their relationship. But then what happened was he had a security check done on her because being who he is, and then he found out that essentially she was not a very nice person. So it showed how he let his guard down, and then unfortunately when he let his guard down, he got whacked. And it also dealt with the whole responsibility of Alec Freeman being in charge of SHADO while he was out of the office. And it's like Ed Straker said to Alec Freeman before he left, he said, the other side of the fence, the big chair. And that really just kind of laid the groundwork of everything that Straker deals with. And I thought that was a very deep episode as well too.
I actually watched that one last night too, Roy. And you mentioned Dalatac Affair before, but it was actually Responsibility Seat where the rig was headed towards the Moonbase.
Yes. And then Alec had to make the determination of how to take care of that problem, which he does, and it's able to be solved. And then that was one of the things that they're talking about at the end of the episode, him and Straker, that Alec was in charge, he made the decisions, and essentially whatever happens, but it was going to be his, he would have been on the hot seat with that. So that was kind of cool. Looking at some of our online comments, Rob Barnes is saying, always liked the episode Mindbender. Yeah, Mindbender, that was definitely a really good episode, Rob. And in fact, Warren and I were just talking about this yesterday, because what was so cool about this episode was, well, first off, just to give a refresh to our audience out there, it dealt with a UFO being shot down over Moonbase, and then they bring fragments of it back to be examined. And the fragments of the ship cause hallucinatory effects for the people that touch the fragments. And they essentially, one person is killed on Moonbase from this. These fragments are brought back to Earth and to SHADO headquarters, and another operative, goes mad as a result of it. But then what the ultimate thing that happens is Straker touches one of the moonstones that they bring back. And when that happens, he actually envisions that this is all a set, that he is an actor that is on the set that's taking place, and it's not real. SHADO does not exist. It's just, it's like his entire life is but a movie production. And for the first time, you get to see the sets as they're laid out. You not only get to see SHADO headquarters, you get to see the rafters, you get to see the lights, you actually get to see Sylvia Anderson. They're doing a shot. They're filming where they go, cut, and then what happens is he's with Stryker's with General Henderson in his office, and then they show the entire film crew, and it's amazing because it just shows you the reality of what real television is, and it's almost like you're breaking that fourth wall, which is something you should never do, but it's just too cool because you get to see everything that's there, and
of course you get to see the Moonbase from overhead. Oh goodness, it was like a big Twilight Zone episode, that one.
Yeah, it really was really, really cool. And then what happens is he goes through the studio, and then he runs into Paul Foster, and he's saying, no, it's not Paul, it's Mike, because it's Michael Billington, that's his name. And then they're showing when his, what happens when his son gets hit by the car, and he's like, that's my entire life on the screen. And he goes, almost like, don't be a method actor, calm down. And Stuart Damon is in this episode too, but that Space 1999 fans know him from Matter of Life and Death, and then also The Bringers of Wonder Part 1 and Part 2 when he plays Guido Verdaschi. And he's playing, I believe, his stand-in. And it's just really cool how they just go through all the sets. I mean, you see the Moonbase, you see SHADO, you see the corridors, and it was very interesting and very well done.
Very cool, yeah.
Yeah, just checking some other comments. Seeing hey David, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. David is checking in. He's saying confetti check A-OK was heavy, and then on Her Majesty's Secret Service of UFO. Yeah, I would agree with that, David, because you're getting the backstory in regards to his life and everything. And Isabel said, "Ignore me. That they wouldn't apply on the Moonbase." Martin Ben said the Champions also. Yes, for Stuart Damon, he was a member of the Champions. That's right. And Joe was saying that was very Andy Warholish. Yes, it really was. It definitely it was almost like a I guess I hate to use the term, but it was almost like a bad trip. Anthony Rooney checking in. Stuart Damon starred in another IT series called the Champions. Yes, that is absolutely correct. Anthony, you're absolutely right about that. So I want to ask some of our fans out there, people that are joining us, what were your favorite episodes? I mean, Rob was mentioning Mindbender. Which episode stands out in your mind from UFO? Which one would you say was your favorite, or one that you really liked a lot? And has it been a while since you've seen the series? We were talking, how we watched this when we were kids. This show really disappeared. I mean, I was fortunate to be able to watch it on WOR TV out of New York for some time, and then it kind of, fell off. And, to be in that period of the late 70s and the early 80s, that's when stuff was really starting to go onto VHS. And, you could actually, maybe if you were lucky, and this is how I actually was able to watch it in the mid 80s, going to, science fiction conventions, because a lot of dealers would have some of these episodes, and was able to watch it as a result. But it wasn't until later on when it came out onto DVD. Now you can get it on Blu-ray, which is really, really cool. Anthony is saying Time Lash. That's a favorite of his. Martin Bend is saying Sub Smash. Tim Beck. Hi, Tim. Thanks for joining us.
We talked about both those.
Yes. Yeah, we did. Time Lash.
Very good episodes. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Warren.
I was going to say, Sub Smash, it really stuck with me because it was so claustrophobic. And it was just shot so wonderfully on that submarine set. But when Nina Barry is crawling down that access tube, it's just like,
Yeah, and what was really great about that episode too is, I mean, they're essentially, just to refresh everybody's minds, they are trapped in Skydiver, which is a submarine, and they only have so much time before the oxygen's going to run out, and she has to go through a very narrow passage in order to try to get to the surface. And she's very, they're very scared, and it's very, very claustrophobic in there, as you were saying. And it was done very well. And I think she actually was claustrophobic. I think I read that she was, if I don't remember correctly.
Right. I think you're right, yeah.
So having to do...
A lot of what you saw there was coming through, and it wasn't acting.
No, exactly. And she really, I mean, you really bought into it, and you really could see that there was a strong relationship between Straker's character and also, her Nina Barry's character as well in that show, in that episode. It was really very, very strong performances. And that episode, I believe, was one of the later ones that was filmed too. Or no, actually, I'm sorry, that was the last episode that was filmed at MGM.
At MGM, yeah.
And here's a trivia question for the UFO fans out there. Does anybody know what the last scene that was filmed for that series was on the MGM stage? That is a trivia question. What was the very last shot? Hey, while everybody's thinking about that, I just want to say hi to my cousin, Elizabeth. Hey, Liz, thanks for joining us. It's great to see that you're out there. I hope you're enjoying this. I appreciate it. Yes, and again, it was the very last scene that was actually filmed on the MGM stage. And seeing if anybody's commenting on that. And as I'm waiting, Mike is tuning in. He's saying the time lapse just for the scene where they walk past the producer and the starlet, and he's staring at her cleavage. Yeah, that was funny, Mike. Yeah.
There were a lot of. I'm thinking of Identified in particular. There was a couple lines from Alec Freeman that were just like so politically incorrect.
Yeah.
I know it was the '60s, but oh my God, they're just like.
Yeah.
Something about a G-string on a belly dancer or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's some of the stuff. I mean, in fact, that episode, the very first episode, actually had Virginia Lake. She was Alec Freeman was piloting, and he was, kind of like flirting with her, and that's where we first actually meet her. Incidentally, Virginia Lake, Colonel Lake. Anybody out there know who her son is? This is an easy trivia question. I'm waiting to see who answers this, and I have a feeling that everybody's going to be on the horn on this one. Isabel's saying, yes, Sub Smash. I had to watch after Dolores Martinez talked about it at a con. Oh, that must have been really cool, Isabel. That's really cool that you got to see her discuss that. That really had to be very cool. Well, going back, the last scene that was actually filmed at the MGM studio is from the Dalek Tech Affair, and it's where Paul Foster is with his girlfriend in that episode, played by Tracy Reed, I believe. And what happens is she's giving the amnesia drug, and she starts to pass out, and then she's dreaming about Foster. And what's happening is they're on almost like a spinner, and they're spinning in a circle, and then they have all the psychedelic lights going on in the background, and it's just her, kissing him, and then she loses consciousness. I had read that was the very last scene that they actually had filmed at the studio. In regards to my other trip,
I did not know that. I know the last scene that was shot at Pinewood because you and I were there, Roy.
Yes, we were.
That was
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little later too. But and then in regards to my other question,
Time Lash, perfect.
Yes, we're talking about Time Lash, and then talking about Wanda Ventham. Her son is Benedict Cumberbatch. Yes, and Isabel actually got it, and Rob Barnes got it. So good job, guys. You're absolutely right. Good job. David is saying, just have to say 1980 was way cooler than I remember it. Yeah, right, David? Also true. Yeah, Time Lash was a really interesting episode. I mean, it dealt with Colonel Lake and Ed Straker getting back to SHADO headquarters, and when they get there, everybody is frozen and trying to find out what has happened. And then as they're investigating, they start slowing down, and essentially they have to take a drug which is going to speed them up so that their metabolism goes very fast, and I think it's called X50, and it was almost like a form of speed, I guess you could say. And what they did was they were trying to find out what was going on, and it turned out that one of the operatives at the base had gone rogue, and he was working with the aliens. And basically, folks, I think this is my second one tonight, where they were taking over and going to pay him off on some type of compensation to betray, SHADO. And what happens is they have to destroy a UFO, in order to release them from being frozen. But it was a very action-packed story. You really didn't know what was going on initially, and it was almost like it was kind of the chase. And it definitely had a lot of action. And I believe this episode actually had been preempted because of the drug use or something. There was some kind of something that happened in regards to that where it wasn't being shown maybe initially, or there was a reason because of that. But definitely one of the fan favorites, though. It was a, an action adventure episode, which was very good. Hey, Captain Phil's on with us. Phil, thank you for joining. Glad to see you out there. Yeah, Mike Rizzo, many race cars. Yes, they had the cars that were going on, and that was kind of, and yeah, everything was out of sync. And essentially, what happens is Turner, who's the agent that went rogue, says to Straker that you're never going to catch me because where you think I am is where I was. So what Straker does is he machine guns into an area where he's not able to see him, and then what happens is he gets him, and then he's able to finally destroy the UFO. But he's so hyped up from this drug that he's going crazy, and then they finally have to restrain him, and his mind almost breaks. Meanwhile, Colonel Lake had actually gotten hurt and had gotten knocked unconscious because of Turner, so she has amnesia. But it was definitely a very good episode, to say the least.
There were some really nice moments between Straker and Colonel Lake in this episode, and they sort of subtly infer that there might be something more going on there, or there could be potential or something like that. I always enjoyed that.
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree. I have to say too, it's a shame too, because Alec Freeman's character, Alec was kind of the number 2 that was brought in, and from what I read is that essentially he did not come across as a leading man type of a guy. I mean, he wasn't like this, really, big handsome guy and what have you, that they felt that was going to appeal to the audience. And then that's why they brought in Michael Billington. And then as time progressed, he was essentially being, his role was being minimized. And then it was, I think his last episode was in Subsmash, and Subsmash, as we were saying earlier, was the last episode that was filmed, the complete episode that was filmed at the MGM lot. And then 5 months went by before they started filming again. And then when they resumed filming, he was no longer part of the production for those final 9 episodes. And I think he did an amazing job. I think he was excellent in his role, and he went on to do a lot of other stuff. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that were a part of the show, especially Ed Straker, who was Ed Bishop, and Michael Billington, are no longer with us. And tragically, I believe they both died in June of 2005, and they died within 5 days of each other. And both were really wonderful actors. And I never had the opportunity to meet them in person, unfortunately. But from what I've seen, just from fan response and what I've heard from other fans, and then what I've seen actually of them on talking to people at conventions, on there's stuff you can check out on YouTube. They were very, very nice people as far as fandom was concerned, and it's a shame that they're no longer with us. But it is a 50, like I said, a 50-year-old series, which is crazy.
Would be nice to see a few of whoever's still kicking around at a upcoming convention.
Yeah, that would be excellent. Maybe down the road, right, Warren?
I'm doing my research. Yeah.
Just want to say hi to Dave Harvey. Dave, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. Hope you're doing well tonight. Phil is saying, I've always wanted to remake of UFO where they essentially keep the premise that intact, which would be a fight off an alien invasion with the space tech on hand in 1980, also a secret war. The only advantage the humans have is home field, while the aliens are on a desperate mission to keep their species alive. Yeah, that would be interesting. I would have to say that would definitely be interesting, Phil. Andy Rooney's saying, speaking of Wanda Ventham on UFO, she gets to act opposite Darren Nesbitt, again, who she had previously worked in on It's Your Funeral episode of The Prisoner. Yes, that's right. They were both in that Prisoner episode. Thanks for pointing that, Anthony. I appreciate that.
Oh boy, this is, at the end of the episode tonight, we're gonna go down the rabbit hole, everyone. So I hope you all stick around.
Yeah, we're talking stuff. We're actually gonna run a little later than our hour, and I just to let everybody know, we actually had some technical difficulties. We lost about 10 minutes. Right now, we're at about 8:09. We're probably gonna run till about 8:30 or so. So I appreciate everybody's staying on board. And we're having our discussion about UFO, the television series by Jerry and Sylvie Anderson, back from 1970. Well, 1969 to 1970, but televised in 1970. Yeah, Warren, you had talked about well, you know what? Before we get to that, about your where I know you're going to go with one other episode that I thought was very interesting too, and I wonder if the fans remember this one, Kill Straker, and very powerful episode. And in this episode, what happens is Paul Foster is essentially brainwashed along with another pilot, and they go through radio silence as they're re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, and they just, in a subliminal message is conveyed to them to kill Straker. And the one pilot attempts to do this on the moon and fails, and then another pilot tries to and then also Foster locks Straker and also himself in the command center of the Moonbase, and then there's not explosive decompression, but there's an oxygen leak, and Straker's got the gun and he's fighting to stay conscious, because if Paul Foster gets the gun, he's going to kill him. And essentially what's happening is he's been, like I said, he's been brainwashed by the aliens with the just to kill him. So they are able to overcome Foster. They're able to save Straker, and the doctor Jackson, he theorizes that he's been under a very intense form of brainwashing, and that Foster has it under control. However, he's a security risk because you'll never know. I mean, maybe he'll snap and at some point kill him. So what Straker does is he orders for Foster and him to be put into this room, which is almost like a weapons room. And he tells the guards under no circumstances are the doors to be unlocked. So Foster thinks everything is fine, and he's got a clean bill of health. And then what happens is Straker torments the hell out of him, and he's trying to goad him, and he's saying trying to take over command and do all this, and that going behind his back and talking to General Henderson, and he antagonizes the hell out of him, and at one point he even slaps him. And then what happens is Foster gets a gun and he tells him, "Don't come any closer." And he says, and then Straker's going, "Shoot me, shoot, kill." And he can't do it. And he starts crying. And then Straker apologizes for what he's done. The intensity of that scene was amazing, because it was obviously acting, but the adrenaline level was up. And in an interview, Michael Billington even talked about it, that Ed Bishop actually really slapped him, and he slapped him hard. And it was a lot of energy for that scene. It was very, very, very powerful. And you could, once that was over, they still had the bond, and he even apologizes to him, and he says, I had to do it because if you were ever going to kill me, that would have been the time. And it just unified their relationship, because he really, he's like a mentor to him, but he was subjected to this really strong hypnotic deprogramming or programming by the UFOs. So to me, that was always a fan favorite, if I have to say so myself. How about you, Warren?
I thought of something here, and I didn't have the actual model, but I want to show you something here. We talked earlier about design and inspiration. I don't know if you all can see this.
Oh, very cool.
That's the DeLorean.
Yep. Back to the Future.
Remember the famous car from UFO?
Yep.
Totally iconic, and there again, just nothing else has come like. Well, maybe that's close, but yeah.
Oh, you know what's funny though about that too? That was one thing we did not mention about is those cars, Warren, and those cars were left over, I believe, from Doubleganger. Which, incidentally, folks, Doubleganger, the title of that movie also was Journey to the Far Side of the Sun. I think I saw a posting out there that somebody had mentioned it earlier. So it went by Doubleganger and Journey to the Far Side of the Sun. And there were, I believe, 2 cars made for that. There's the brown one, which Straker was deemed as being his car. And then there's also the purple one, I believe, that Foster drove around in. So I think there's two. I actually have seen over the years that the one car was pretty much deteriorated and nothing has been done with it. It's and here comes my Star Trek reference, folks, because all roads lead back to Star Trek. But for years, the Galileo 7 was left outside in the elements, and it was essentially deteriorating. And then what happened was it was restored, and actually it was restored by a company that is in the Jersey Shore area, right, literally like an hour and a half from where I live. And they were doing like a grand opening of that, and I actually missed it when they were going to do it. I missed it by like hours. I didn't even realize that was going on, and I was very upset. And then later got to see it on the Intrepid with the Star Trek group of friends. But anyway, regards to that car though, yeah, it was very, very cool, and that is really cool, Warren. But those doors didn't really work. They actually had a stuntman on the side, yeah, out of frame, lifting those doors, and then they added the special sound effects for it, which was really, really cool.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jim Winch over in the UK restored one of the SHADO sort of mini Jeeps or buses.
Oh, really? Yes, you know what? That's right. He did. I remember seeing that. That's absolutely right. Yeah.
Like the sort of turquoise, greenish color.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Good memory on that, Warren.
Good job.
Oh, Isabel just commented, America chose to give the game away. Europe had a more mysterious title with Doubleganger. Yeah, I unfortunately, I agree with you, Isabel. I would have preferred Doubleganger being, more of the title, and then they went with Journey to the Far Side of the Sun. Joe indicated apparently a member of the UFO Anderson site has an original one and is making himself a mold for his own use. Oh, that's interesting, Joe. I did not know that.
Oh, of Straker's car?
Yes.
Ah, very, very nice.
Yeah, very, very cool.
I'm really surprised nobody's put out a scale model kit. I would have thought that would have.
Yeah, that would be really cool. But yeah, Dennis is saying that was an excellent movie out there. Yeah. But so yeah, that was definitely another really, really good episode, and that was, I believe, one of the original 17 episodes that was done. And then again, there was a different tone for the later 9. But all in all, though, I mean, there were a total of 26, and thanks to DVD, Blu-ray and DVDs, and even VHS, we're able to watch these series, which is really good. And I believe it's even available online. You can watch the episodes too, so it's definitely available now, which is something we really didn't have.
They do look very, very nice, and one of the things, I'm not a cinematographer or a film expert by any means, but I'm quite a bit into, I have been for years, home theater and screens and different systems. And the one thing about UFO, and the same can be said for space, is that the cameras that they used, even though they were shooting things for like the old TV ratio, which is essentially square, you can view it on an HD, on a widescreen TV today, and if you use the zoom mode, which basically cuts off the top and bottom, so it doesn't stretch it or it doesn't distort it, it just simply crops the top and bottom. You get a really nice widescreen image, and even insofar as like none of the credits are cut off.
Oh, okay.
It's really amazing. They almost have that foresight where they place the credits so that if you viewed it in a widescreen mode, you'd still catch it. It's just, again, forward thinking.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Warren, and that really just shows how that series actually holds up very well. Oh, also just want to say hi to Sue. Sue's commenting. You can see a replica of the Galileo at the Star Trek Original Series set tour. The Star Trek Original Series set tour is amazing, and we will definitely talk more about that in upcoming episodes. But definitely, once all this passes, folks, you have to go up there. It is mind blowing. I mean, what James Cawley has done with the original series sets of classic Star Trek, and the group of fans that have helped create this and put this together, totally amazing. And we will be talking about Star Trek.
Sorry?
No, I was just going to say we will definitely be exploring Star Trek down the road. So, and I'm sorry, Warren, what were you going to say? Did I ever visit?
I was just going to say, have you ever happened to visit any UFO filming sites?
Yes, as a matter of fact, that is an excellent lead-in. Yeah, back in 2014, at the Alpha 2014 convention that took place in the UK, which I was very fortunate enough to be able to go to. In fact, Warren was my roommate. Um, we actually, right prior to the actual convention, we decided that with his sister Heather and a mutual friend Patty, who I got to meet Patty through Warren and Heather, we went and took a trip because we were in Birmingham, right? Binghamton. No, where was the convention at? It,
Peterborough.
what was that?
Peterborough.
Peterborough. I'm sorry. See, 6 years have gone by and my memory's toast. That's what happens when you're over 50. So sorry. Yeah, we were in Peterborough, and what the convention was going to be held in Peterborough. And what we did was we actually decided that we were going to go to try to seek out Pinewood Studios. And what we did was we took trains and cabs, and we got there, and we got to the gates, and that's about as far as we got was to the gates, because unfortunately at that time Star Wars was being filmed. Not that I'm not a Star Wars fan. I definitely enjoy Star Wars, but honestly, the last would have wanted to do, well, I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't want to see the Millennium Falcon, so that would be a lie. But anyway, our purpose of going there was just to get to the sound stages where, L&M Studios, where Space 1999 was shot. And unfortunately, we didn't make it past the gate, but it was just fun to say, you know what, we were actually there. And then what we did was we took another cab ride, and on the opposite side of Pinewood Studios actually borders with Black Park, which was where a lot of horror movies, the Hammer films were filmed. You also had Space 1999, The Full Circle was filmed there. UFO Identified, I believe they shot there as well for the opening pilot episode. It's just an amazing forest type area. They actually have a lake area there too. And what we did was we were dropped off, had the cab come back like in about 2 hours. And what we did was Warren and I, we rented bikes and we biked all the way to the border of the fence where Black Park ends and Pinewood begins. So we're actually like on the back side of Black Park. And then what we did was we were like looking at, you could see the sound stages and, theoretically where L&M Studios were at and where Jerry Anderson's office was. So it was definitely a fan moment. It was, call it a nerd moment, call it a geek moment, call it what you want, but it was just a cool moment. And I actually videotaped it too, because it was just really cool to be at that park. I mean, where so many productions. I mean, The Saint, I'm sure, was filmed there, and all of these ITC productions, and
lots of
James Bond movies, and
Harry Potter.
Yes, it was just incredible. And to say that we actually did that and then went there, and and then actually got to be on the border, it was amazing. So yeah, it was so cool.
It wasn't until we actually got back, Roy, and I think I mentioned this to you, but when we were peering over the fence, and so we're basically looking at the back at L&M stages, but then there's a little section of office complexes.
Yes.
And I didn't realize it at the time. We knew Jerry's office was supposedly up in there somewhere, but if you watch the last 2 or 3 episodes of UFO, you can see the fence that we were peering over.
Oh, jeez.
And all of those offices were used in Last Sleep and Time Lash, and there's one scene where Straker's car pulls up, right? And you can see the fence that we were peering over. We were right there.
Wow. See, I didn't even realize that, Warren. That is really cool. Yeah, actually, Isabel's asking, did we make it? Did we find Elstree? I think we went past Elstree Studios. I think the cab driver showed us that. I seem to have a recollection of that, Isabel, that we did, and we didn't stop, but I think he showed us where it was, and then we kept driving. I'm almost positive, because there was another studio that we had gone by, and I would have to. I don't know. Do you remember that, Warren?
I think the one you're thinking of. I was actually talking to Chris Trice about this here recently. I think the one that the cab driver told us about was in Slough, and if we watch The Apprentice to UFO, I think that's where a lot of the visual effects were done. With Derek Medig's was a studio in Slough.
Okay.
It's also where they filmed a lot of Thunderbirds. That studio unfortunately burnt down a couple years ago.
Oh, okay.
So we lost it, but There is another studio that's sort of in the vicinity, Bray Studio, where they did all the visuals for 1999.
Gotcha.
That's still in existence and operational today.
Yeah, yeah. Because with Space 1999, they filmed a lot of the special effects were filmed at Bray. That's where Brian Johnson had his. That's where they did the effects. Right. Isabel is saying, I remember him telling the story at the con too. He looked different because he didn't have blonde hair in real life. He's replying to Phil Merkel. And then also Heather is saying, bikes in Black Park. Yeah, you remember that, Heather. Heather, thanks for joining us, too. I appreciate it. It's nice to know that you're out there. And hope you're doing well. Thank you. Yeah, those were good memories. Those were great memories. And like I said, Warren and I were on our bikes, and Heather and Patty were like up by, we're just like walking around, and we were determined to get to the border. And I remember I had my video camera going because I wanted to film just that area. So I'm going to have to, dig all that stuff out. That it feels like a long time ago.
It does. Good times, though.
It was really, really good times.
I think, and this is, this is Roy and I's mentality here. I mean, we had the choice. We had basically one day to sightsee in and around the UK, and our choices were go to Pinewood Studios or go to Stonehenge.
Yes.
And what did we choose?
Pinewood Studios. Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, Isabel's saying home of Hammer Horror. Yeah, it definitely was. That's so true. It really, really was. But
we are, for anybody who isn't aware, and if I may, Roy, I mean, we are planning a trip back to Pinewood at the next convention that we're planning for September next year.
Yes, Warren. Please go ahead and tell the folks about the convention, please.
So everything at this point, with all things COVID, in lieu of that, we're full steam ahead. We feel that we have a good chance of making that date and having everything lifted by then. Of course, we've already discussed the contingent that we may have to delay if things last longer than anticipated. But we feel that with 14 or 15 months, we should be in the clear. So we've recently announced hotel information, a few guests. The big takeaway in regards to what we were just discussing is a one-day excursion to Black Park and to Pinewood to see those sites, very, very famous sites. And it'll be, to my knowledge, the first time a convention has actually incorporated filming locations within the weekend, so it should be a lot of fun. It is www.destinationmoonbasealpha.com or on Facebook at Destination Moonbase Alpha.
Awesome. Thanks for giving that information, Warren. I really appreciate it. And
we're really, and I mean, this sort of goes without saying. I think everybody's aware we are opening it up to a lot of, virtually any of Jerry Anderson's properties, and that means behind-the-scenes personnel, production staff, and of course, stars and celebrities. So we're really hoping to get a couple people from UFO in attendance. It'll be really special to meet them for sure.
No, definitely. That'll be really cool. Yeah, really looking forward to it, and I'm just hoping that everything works out with everything, and with everything that's going on in the world. So stay tuned, folks. And Warren, just could you give out the website one more time?
Sure, it's www.destinationmoonbasealpha, all one word, .com.
Awesome.
And the social media page is at Destination Moonbase Alpha on Facebook.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. We're going to start winding things down. I have to say, I've been going through tubs of stuff, and I came across this. This is from 1990. And this was actually... This was episode, it was magazine number 1. It says, I guess it's a collector's edition. Anything that's, with number 1 is a collector's issue, right? Doesn't matter what it is. So, but I thought it was really cool because this is actually, had a episode guide and everything and was talking in depth about UFO. And then, of course, they did 1999 after that. So that was really, really cool. And also, if you do have the opportunity to get the Blu-rays, definitely get them. Unfortunately, yep, and then Warren's showing it, and that is...
It's a beautiful set, and there's a gigantic book inside, too.
Yes, this is the book.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we both got it.
That's the plug, and that's done through network. If you have a region-free Blu-ray player, it will play these. They are pristine. The copies are wonderful. I would definitely recommend them. The reason why I've actually got one was because Space 1999 actually came out on network. So highly recommended for UFO fans. It's a wonderful opportunity to watch these episodes again and to take them in, and they are really superb. And one person we didn't mention too about Warren, was Barry Gray with his opening music. I mean,
of course.
That theme is incredible. I mean, it's like it lays the groundwork of everything. It tells the story of SHADO at the very beginning. It shows you the headquarters and everything. It's got the really cool music, and you see the Moonbase, you see the interceptors, you see Skydiver. Harlington and Staker, the studios, and that was the trivia question I was asking about earlier. I mean, it's definitely very, very cool. So,
very, very 70s disco, funky, but man, Barry could just work on that keyboard and just wow, make you want to dance.
No, he was amazing.
And it made me have quick cuts like in 1999. So it's all very exciting the way it's put together.
Yes, it really, really is. So just want to put that out there. Hey, Gordon's on. Hi, Gordon. Thanks for joining us. Glad to see you're out there. And Mike Rizzo says ends in an explosion. Yeah, definitely ends in an explosion. And with you have the bum dun 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 bum. Of course, that's it's just like bam. It's really, really cool. It's a great way to end it. So with that, I'm going to just be winding down. Again, I want to thank you, Warren, for being on with me as my co-host today. I really appreciate it. And, as we took a trip, back to, Jerry Anderson and Sylvie Anderson's television series UFO, I hope all of our, viewers are doing well at this time. Again, I just want everybody to stay safe. The world is a crazy place right now with everything going on. And it's just that, just social distance for now. And I know there's a lot. This whole experience is draining, not only psychologically, financially. It's the whole gambit. And this whole thing. It's just I'm just hoping that we come out of it sooner than later, and just try to keep our heads above water. Just stay safe, everybody. And a thank you to everybody that's, out there on the front lines, because without you, we wouldn't have what we have. So just want to say, everybody keep safe and just stay afloat. Also, just want to give a quick plug. This Wednesday, Mike Rizzo and Mary Beth Rakowski will be doing Sci-Fi Distilled. It's a weekly series in which they discuss movies and also science fiction television shows of the 1980s and the 1990s. So looking forward to being on there and being. Whoops, I lost you there. Sorry, Warren. We're back. Technical difficulties tonight. But anyway, again, Sci-Fi Distilled. It's going to be 7:00 p.m. on Wednesday night, and that's Eastern Daylight Time. And what we're going to be talking about is, and I'm actually going to be a guest co-host on as well. We're going to be talking about the 1980 movie Flash Gordon. So everybody remember Flash, savior of the universe, king of the impossible. I love that movie. I mean, I remember seeing that movie at least 3 times in a row at the Easton Eric in Easton, Pennsylvania, and I remember going with my very close friend Joe Metz and Joe Brickman. And I think we went with maybe some other people, and it was like weekend after weekend after weekend, and it was just amazing. It was just a fun time, a great movie, and we're going to be talking about that. And yes, and Mary Beth saying Flash, and then Gordon saying Gordon's alive. We have our own Brian Blessed from Space 1999, who's in that movie, which is incredible. I mean, he was Voltan. He was Cabot Rowland in the Space 1999 episode Deaths of the Dominion. He was also Maya's father in the year 2 opener of The Metamorph. And then also you got Timothy Dalton, who was, James Bond in The Living Daylights, and then also License to Kill, one of my favorite Bond movies. So it's going to be a good time, so definitely check us out. And Warren, any last words?
Yes, can I have 30 seconds?
Yeah, go for it.
Because we ran out of time. We could do another episode on it. Hear me out. For as much of a prequel UFO was to Space 1999, The Prisoner was a prequel in the same shared universe, the UFO in Space 1999. And the moment you realize, when you start putting it together with all the little set pieces and incidental music cues, the same production company, behind-the-scenes personnel, guest stars, and most importantly, when you realize for the first time that Commander Gorski is Ed Straker's ex-wife's boyfriend. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Warren. It's definitely something to think about. You never know. Anyway, I want to say goodnight to everybody. Thank you for joining with us. Tune in. We will be back next Friday for episode number 9. I will be back with another co-host. I will be announcing what show we will be talking about within the next 2 days. So until then, my name is Roy Bjellquist. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining me with Warren Friedrich. Live long and prosper. Take care. Be safe. God bless.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everyone.